The sky was dark, filled with smoke and ash. Cities lay in ruins, and the sound of explosions echoed everywhere. Earth, once a thriving planet, was now a battlefield. The Galactic Council had decided that humanity was too dangerous to be left unchecked. They sent their elite soldiers, armed with advanced weapons and technology, to bring the humans to heel. But the Council underestimated the spirit of the people. In a small town, a group of survivors gathered in an abandoned warehouse. Among them was Sarah, a brave woman with a fierce determination to protect her family and friends. She looked around at the faces of her fellow survivors, each marked by fear and loss, but also hope. "We can't let them take our home," she said, her voice steady. "We need to fight back!" Next to her was Mark, a former engineer who had lost everything in the attacks. He nodded in agreement, his eyes glinting with resolve. "I've been working on a plan," he said. "If we can gather some of the old technology hidden in the city, we might have a chance to escape." As they talked, the sounds of the Council's ships filled the air. Huge black vessels hovered ominously above, their searchlights scanning the ground. The soldiers inside were ruthless, showing no mercy. They were here to capture or kill anyone who dared to resist. But the humans had something the Council did not expect: their will to survive. Sarah and Mark quickly gathered a small group of trusted friends. They knew they had to act fast. "We need to get to the old power plant," Mark explained. "There are old weapons and vehicles that could help us." The group nodded, understanding the danger but ready to fight for their freedom. As they moved through the city, they saw the destruction left by the Council. Buildings were crumbling and fires raged everywhere. Yet, in the midst of the chaos, they also saw other survivors hiding, waiting for a chance to fight back. The spirit of humanity was alive, and it inspired them. When they reached the power plant, they found it mostly intact. The group split up to search for anything useful. Sarah and a few others scoured the control room, while Mark led another team to the storage area. Time was running out, and they could hear the Council's ships getting closer. In the control room, Sarah found an old radio transmitter. "This could be useful," she said, her heart racing. She quickly repaired it and contacted other groups of survivors. "We need to unite! We can't fight this alone!" she urged. The radio crackled with responses from all over the city, and hope flickered in their hearts. Meanwhile, Mark and his team discovered a cache of weapons and vehicles. "This is it!" Mark exclaimed, holding up a rusty old rifle. "We can use these to defend ourselves." They loaded everything they could carry and prepared to leave. But just as they were about to exit, the doors burst open. Council soldiers flooded in, weapons drawn. "You are outnumbered!" their leader shouted. Panic surged through the group, but Sarah quickly regained her composure. "We may be outnumbered, but we will not go down without a fight," she shouted, rallying her friends. A fierce battle broke out in the power plant. The humans fought with everything they had, using the element of surprise to their advantage. Mark fired the old rifle he had found, while Sarah led the charge, her determination igniting the others. The Council soldiers were taken aback by the humans' fierce resistance. They had expected an easy victory, but instead, they faced a united force willing to defend their home. The humans fought bravely, fueled by their desire for freedom. As the smoke cleared and the last Council soldier fell, the survivors stood together, breathing heavily. They had won this battle, but they knew the war was far from over. Sarah looked at her friends, their faces lit with determination. "This is just the beginning," she said, her heart racing. "We will escape this death world and show the Galactic Council that humanity cannot be defeated." With renewed hope and courage, the group prepared to leave Earth behind, ready to face whatever dangers lay ahead in the galaxy. The fight for their survival had just begun. The survivors stood in the wreckage of the power plant, breathing heavily. They had just fought bravely against the Council's soldiers, but now a new challenge awaited them. They had to escape Earth and find safety in the stars. Sarah, Mark, and their friends knew they could not waste any time. The Galactic Council would send more troops to crush them. Mark gathered everyone together. "We need to head to the old spaceport," he said, urgency in his voice. "It's not far from here, and we might find ships that can take us away from this death world." The group nodded, determination shining in their eyes. They understood the risks, but were willing to do whatever it took to survive. As they moved through the ruins of the city, the atmosphere was thick with tension. The sound of Council ships echoed in the sky, reminding them of the danger they faced. Sarah led the way, keeping an eye out for any signs of the enemy. They had to be careful, but they also had to move quickly. The streets were eerily quiet. Abandoned cars lined the road, and the only sounds were the crunch of debris underfoot and the distant roar of engines. Every shadow felt like a potential threat. Sarah's heart raced, but she pushed her fear aside. They had come too far to turn back now. When they reached the spaceport, it was mostly deserted, with only a few damaged ships remaining. The sight of the old, rusted vessels filled them with both hope and fear. "We need to find one that still works," Mark said, scanning the area. "It may take some time, but we can't give up." The group split into smaller teams to search the ships. Sarah joined Mark, and they approached an old cargo ship, its exterior battered but still standing. As they inspected it, they found signs of life inside. "This one might work," Mark said, pointing to the control panel. "If we can get the engines running, we could escape." As they worked on the ship, Sarah's mind raced with thoughts of what lay ahead. The Council would not give up easily, and the galaxy was vast and unknown. But they had to try. She could feel the weight of responsibility on her shoulders, knowing that the lives of her friends depended on her strength and leadership. Suddenly, a loud noise shattered the silence. The ground shook as a Council ship landed nearby, and soldiers began to pour out. Panic spread through the group. "We have to hurry!" Sarah shouted. "They found us!" Mark and Sarah rushed back to the control panel, their hands moving quickly as they tried to get the ship ready for takeoff. The sound of footsteps grew louder, and they could see the soldiers advancing toward them. Time was running out. With a final push, Mark managed to get the engines to sputter to life. "It's working!" he shouted, but there was no time to celebrate. They jumped into the ship, slamming the doors shut just as the first shots rang out. The ship shook from the impact, and Sarah's heart raced as she rushed to the pilot's seat. "Can you fly this thing?" one of their friends yelled, fear evident in his voice. "I'll do my best," Sarah replied, her hands trembling as she took control. She had never piloted a ship before, but desperation fueled her determination. The ship's engines roared, and Sarah felt a surge of adrenaline as she pushed the throttle. The vessel lurched forward, and they shot out of the spaceport just in time. The Council soldiers fired after them, but they were already in the air, gaining altitude. "Keep going!" Mark shouted, looking back at the chaos below. "We can't stop now!" Sarah focused on the controls, navigating through the debris-filled sky. The city below faded away, and for a moment it felt like they were free. But she knew the Council would not give up easily. As they entered space, the darkness surrounded them. The vastness of the universe stretched out before them, and they were filled with a mix of fear and excitement. "We did it!" One of their friends cheered, but Sarah remained cautious. They had escaped Earth, but the real battle was just beginning. Mark turned to Sarah, his eyes filled with admiration. "You did it," he said. "You got us out of there." Sarah smiled, but her mind was already racing ahead. They needed to find a new home, and they needed to prepare for whatever the Galactic Council had planned next. The survivors looked at each other, their faces lit with hope. They had escaped, but they knew they had to stick together if they wanted to survive. Earth was behind them, and the galaxy awaited, full of dangers and possibilities. They were ready to face whatever came next, united in their fight for freedom. As the ship drifted through the stars, Sarah and her friends felt a mix of excitement and fear. They had escaped Earth, but they were still unsure about what awaited them in the vastness of space. Mark sat at the control panel, his eyes focused on the star map. "We need to find a safe place to land," he said, glancing at Sarah. "There are reports of other human colonies nearby." Sarah nodded, grateful for Mark's calmness. "Let's head toward the nearest colony," she replied. "If there are more survivors, we need to find them." The group huddled around Mark as he plotted their course. They were determined to connect with others who had escaped the Council's grasp. After a few hours of traveling, they spotted a small planet covered in green and blue. "There it is," Mark exclaimed. "That must be the colony." Sarah felt a rush of hope. "Let's go!" She took control of the ship, guiding it toward the surface. As they landed, the crew prepared to disembark. The air outside felt fresh and different from the polluted atmosphere of Earth. They stepped onto the soft ground, and the vibrant colors of the landscape filled them with awe. Yet there was a heaviness in the air, a reminder that they were still in danger. "Keep your eyes open," Sarah warned. "We don't know if the Council is looking for us here." The group nodded, their faces a mix of anticipation and caution. They made their way through the trees and bushes, searching for signs of life. After a short walk, they came across a small settlement. There were makeshift buildings, and in the distance they could hear laughter and voices. "It looks like we found our friends," one of the survivors shouted, excitement in their voice. As they approached, the humans in the settlement turned to see them. Some looked surprised, while others showed signs of fear. A tall man stepped forward, eyeing the newcomers carefully. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice steady but cautious. "We're survivors from Earth," Sarah replied, her heart racing. "We escaped the Galactic Council. We need help." The man's expression softened, and he nodded slowly. "I'm Leo, the leader of this colony. We've been hiding from the Council, too." Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her. "Can we stay here? We need to regroup and plan our next move." Leo looked around at the group, considering their request. "We can offer you shelter, but it's dangerous here. The Council knows about this place, and we must stay hidden." "Any place is better than Earth," Mark chimed in. "We can defend ourselves if we work together." Leo thought for a moment and then nodded. "All right, you can stay, but we must be cautious. Follow me." As they entered the settlement, Sarah noticed the strength of the community. People worked together, planting crops and caring for each other. Children played in the fields, their laughter filling the air. It was a stark contrast to the destruction they had left behind. Once inside, Sarah and her friends shared their story. They explained their escape from Earth and how they had fought against the Council's soldiers. The settlers listened intently, their eyes widening at the tales of bravery. After the meeting, Sarah felt a sense of belonging she hadn't experienced in a long time. They were not alone anymore. The colony offered them a chance to start over, and together they could fight against the Council. That night, they gathered around a fire sharing food and stories. Sarah smiled as she watched everyone connect. People from different backgrounds came together, united by their shared struggle. "This is what we needed," she thought. "Together we can stand strong." Suddenly, the laughter was interrupted by a loud noise in the sky. Everyone froze, looking up at the darkening horizon. A council ship appeared, its massive silhouette blocking out the stars. Panic surged through the group as they scrambled to find shelter. "Everyone hide!" Leo shouted, his voice cutting through the fear. "We need to protect the colony!" The settlers and Sarah's group rushed into nearby buildings, hearts pounding. Sarah felt her pulse quicken. They had just found a new home, and now it was in danger. "We can't let them take this away from us," she thought, determination rising within her. As the ship circled overhead, she knew they had to fight. Together, they could defend their new friends and make a stand against the Galactic Council. This was not just about survival anymore. It was about fighting for freedom and protecting the bonds they had formed. In the face of danger, Sarah felt ready to rise up, knowing that their strength lay in their unity. The battle for their new life had just begun, and they would face it together. The atmosphere in the colony was tense as the council ship hovered ominously above them. Sarah and her friends crouched behind a building, peering out to assess the situation. Leo, the colony leader, gathered everyone together to form a plan. "We need to fight back," he said firmly, his voice steady despite the fear in the air. "We cannot let them take our home." Sarah felt a rush of determination. This was their chance to stand up against the Galactic Council. "What can we do?" she asked, stepping forward. "We have to protect our people." Leo nodded, appreciating her courage. "We must gather resources. We have old weapons stored in the back of the settlement. We can use them to defend ourselves." The group murmured in agreement. They were ready to take a stand. "Mark and I can help organize the defenses," Sarah said, glancing at her friend. "We can set up traps and barricades around the colony to slow them down." Mark grinned and nodded, already thinking of ways to use their environment to their advantage. "Good idea," Leo replied, clapping his hands together. "We need everyone to pitch in. Those who can fight should arm themselves, while others should prepare the homes for any incoming threats." The group quickly dispersed, each person knowing their role in this crucial moment. As Sarah and Mark made their way to the back of the settlement, they gathered old tools, weapons, and anything else that could be used for defense. The settlers had hidden away rifles and even some ancient earth weapons. It was a mix of past and present, and Sarah felt a surge of hope seeing their determination. "We can't just defend ourselves," Sarah said as they worked. "We have to strike back. If we can damage their ship, they might think twice before attacking us again." Mark looked thoughtful. "You're right. If we can sabotage their engines, they will be forced to retreat. With that in mind, they started to formulate a more detailed plan. They would use the old tools to create explosive devices. It would be risky, but they needed to disrupt the Council's attack. They quickly gathered everyone again, explaining their plan. "Tonight, while they are distracted, we will sneak up to their ship," Mark announced. "We will plant the explosives and get out before they even know what happened." The crowd buzzed with excitement and fear. They understood the danger, but the prospect of fighting back lit a fire in their hearts. Leo stood up, raising his hands to calm the group. "This is a dangerous mission," he said, seriousness in his tone. "If we do this, we must work as a team. We'll go in small groups to avoid detection. We have to be quiet and quick." The settlers nodded, their faces set with determination. As night fell, the colony was silent except for the sounds of the night. Sarah gathered her small team, Mark, Leo, and two other brave settlers, Anna and Jake. "We need to move now," Sarah whispered. "Stay close and follow my lead." The group slipped out of the settlement and into the shadows. The council ship loomed above them, its lights flashing in the darkness. They crept closer, hearts pounding. Sarah could see the soldiers patrolling around the ship. "Stay low," she whispered. They moved silently, using the cover of darkness to hide. Each step brought them closer to their goal. Finally, they reached the underside of the ship. It was bigger than any of them had imagined, and the engine compartment was just above them. "Let's plant the explosives here," Mark said, pulling out the devices they had made. They worked quickly and quietly, placing the explosives in strategic spots. Sarah's hands trembled with excitement and fear, but she focused on the task at hand. Just as they finished, a loud alarm blared from the ship. "They've found us!" Leo shouted, panic in his eyes. "We have to get out of here! Quick, this way!" Sarah urged, leading the group back toward the trees. They ran, hearts racing as the soldiers began to search for them. The sound of boots echoed behind them, but they pressed on, adrenaline pushing them forward. Once they reached the safety of the trees, they turned to look back at the ship. "Did we make it?" Anna gasped, her face pale. Mark nodded, his eyes bright with excitement. "We did it! Now we just have to wait for the explosions." As they crouched in the darkness, they felt a mix of fear and anticipation. They were ready to fight back against the Galactic Council, and they knew this was only the beginning of their struggle. United as a community, they had found their strength, and together they would face whatever came next. The night was dark, but the tension in the air was electric. Sarah and her friends had returned to the safety of the colony, hearts racing as they awaited the results of their daring mission. They had planted explosives on the council ship, and now it was time for the final showdown. As they huddled together, waiting for the signal, Sarah could feel the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. This was not just about them. It was about every person in the colony. They had to fight for their home and their freedom. Suddenly, a loud explosion shattered the silence. The ground shook beneath their feet, and bright flames erupted from the direction of the council ship. Sarah's heart raced with excitement and fear. "We did it!" she shouted, unable to contain her joy. "We hit them!" But their victory was short-lived. The council ship began to move, the soldiers rushing out of the craft, weapons drawn. They were furious and ready to fight back. "They'll be coming for us!" Leo shouted, rallying the settlers. "Get ready! We need to defend our home!" As the soldiers advanced, Sarah quickly organized her friends. "Mark, you and Jake take the left flank. Leo, Anna, and I will hold the center. We need to make sure they don't get past us." The team nodded, adrenaline coursing through their veins. They had come too far to back down now. The first wave of council soldiers charged at them, weapons raised. Sarah's heart pounded as she fired her rifle, taking down the first soldier. "Keep moving!" she yelled, encouraging her friends to fight back. The sounds of battle filled the air as gunfire erupted and shouts echoed through the night. Mark and Jake moved quickly, flanking the soldiers and drawing their attention away from Sarah and the others. Sarah saw Leo take down another soldier with a well-aimed shot, and Anna was running from cover to cover, delivering quick bursts of fire. The colony was alive with chaos and bravery. "Stay together!" Sarah shouted, trying to keep everyone focused. "We can't let them split us up!" Just then, a group of soldiers broke through their lines, heading straight for Anna. "No!" Sarah cried, rushing forward. In that moment, Sarah felt a surge of fear and determination. She had to protect her friends. She charged at the soldiers, dodging their fire as she aimed her weapon. "Get away from her!" she shouted, taking down 2 soldiers in quick succession. Anna looked back, her eyes wide with fear. "Thank you," she yelled, but there was no time to celebrate. More soldiers were pouring in, and the fight was far from over. As they battled, Sarah noticed a larger figure among the soldiers. It was a commander, towering over the rest with a menacing presence. "You think you can defeat the Galactic Council?" he bellowed, his voice booming. "You will pay for this defiance!" Fear gripped Sarah's heart. This was their leader, and he looked ready to crush their spirits. "We won't back down!" she shouted, raising her weapon to face him. "We fight for our home!" The commander laughed, his soldiers regrouping behind him. "You think your little rebellion means anything? You are nothing!" With that, he charged forward, determined to crush their hopes. Mark and Jake rallied beside Sarah, determination shining in their eyes. "We stand together," Mark said firmly. "No one fights alone." The final clash began, and it was intense. The group fought with everything they had. Sarah felt every ounce of fear fade away, replaced by the strength of their unity. They were fighting for each other and for the future of their new home. As the battle raged on, Sarah spotted an opportunity. The commander was momentarily distracted by Leo's fire, leaving himself open. "Now!" she shouted, signaling to Mark and Jake. Together, they charged forward, flanking the commander from both sides. With a swift move, Sarah aimed her weapon and fired. The shot rang out, striking the commander and causing him to stagger back. "You will regret this," he growled, but the fire in his eyes dimmed as he realized they were not backing down. The remaining soldiers hesitated, unsure whether to continue the fight or retreat. "We can win this," Sarah shouted, her voice fierce. "They are afraid of us. We are stronger together." With her words, the tide began to turn. The council soldiers faltered, glancing at one another in doubt. Sensing their fear, Sarah pushed forward, rallying her friends. "Let's finish this!" In a final, desperate push, the group surged forward. With their combined strength, they fought hard, forcing the remaining soldiers to retreat. The council ship was damaged, its power flickering. As the last soldier fled, the colony erupted in cheers. They had done it. They had fought back against the Galactic Council and won. Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her. They were free! In that moment of victory, Sarah realized that they had not only defended their home, they had forged a family among themselves. Together, they had faced their fears and emerged stronger. The battle was over, but their fight for freedom was just beginning. They were ready to face whatever came next, united and unafraid.